So initially, you're just gonna sit. So sit however is comfortable. Do you feel like you need to sit on a little something to be a little more tension free? Is that pretty good?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so yeah, you'll want to make sure you start on a tension-free sitting position. You can kind of start to take, general awareness of how the person breathes. Do they really have a lot of chest rise, neck tension? I mean, just to kind of get an idea of what you might have to deprogram a little bit, but otherwise that's as simple as you need to be with it. So, the breathing, the number one basic principle is that of breathing, and with the Stott Pilates pattern of breath, we're going to think of a three-dimensional rib cage pattern of breath. So kind of cueing in through the nose to kind of fill the sides and the back of the ribs, and then out through pursed lips, trying to get rid of all that exhale. Breathing in and exhaling. And then not a bad idea to kind of just put hand on the tummy and really notice that when you do that exhale, naturally that abdominal wall is going to just kind of pull in. So we're really focusing on our exhale and how it helps to connect the deeper abs. And once again, the inhale, really thinking of expanding the rib cage so that we can keep the abs connected the whole time. Obviously, some other good reasons for a nice breath pattern is releasing any tension, kind of setting the body ready to exercise. This format of breathing through the ribs can get into the lower lobes of the lungs where there's a little more efficient gas exchange. So, and then, just otherwise getting the blood, oxygen in the blood around to the muscles, all those good reasons. Also with this pattern of breathing, at least by the intermediate level, we're going to try and think of putting our inhale with spine extension, just because of how the ribs kind of naturally open out and up, and then trying to put exhale with flexion, since the ribs kind of funnel in and down. So right now, take a breath in, just sitting tall as you are, and then exhale, roll forward so that you're just kind of curving your spine towards your lap. You're going to stay here for 3 breaths or so. So inhale through the nose, filling the ribs. Exhale that air back out. Good. Inhale. Obviously, with this curve forward, it would be a little harder for you to belly breathe anyway. Exhaling all the air back out. Good. We can provide a little tactile feedback here. So if you really think of inhaling and pressing the air into my hands, lovely. And then exhaling it all back out. Good. Take one more inhale from this position. And then exhale, restack the spine. Come up nice and tall. Take a breath again. And then again, exhale. A little bit of a head nod. Folding down to your C curve. Just one inhale in this position. Right back up to your nice stacked spine on your exhale. One more time like this. Breath in. Exhale, little nod, fold. Just think of a forward fold, or sometimes called a C curve to the spine. Take a breath. And right back up as you exhale. Nice and tall. So we briefly talked about those deep abdominals. So again, we're going to talk about the transverse abdominis, sometimes called the transverses. So that muscle starts actually in your back and it wraps around to the sides and inserts here. So when we pull it in, we're activating it to stabilize the lumbopelvic region. So kind of an area that would otherwise be naturally unstable. To assist in firing that transversus, we're going to think of lifting the pelvic floor. So just a gentle little lift, not a big one, because you have to hold it for the whole exercise session. So just that little lift through the pelvic floor helps to keep the transversus firing. Do you feel like you can get that little lift without squeezing the bum, anything that's kind of overdoing it like that? Go ahead and come onto the back, and here if you want, you can use those pads for your head, or I can give you some pillows. So when you get there, just have hips and knees bent, and then put the hand on the belly briefly again, and just feel like you're kind of pulling that abdominal wall down from your own hands. And see if you can kind of tie this all together so that as you inhale, you're trying to avoid a belly breathing. A little bit of rise and fall is okay. Exhaling all the air back out, keeping that transversus engaged, pelvic floor assisting in firing the transversus. Yeah, inhaling in a little bit more through the sides of the ribs, and then again, exhale, think of really knitting those ribs back together. Let's have one more focus on that. Inhale, really expanding like a balloon, inflating the ribs, and then exhale, deflating. Good. So we're gonna go on to basic principle number 2, that of the pelvis and abdominal focus. So start rocking the pelvis forward and back a few times. So from here, obviously you're flattening the low back briefly and then tilting forward. And then just find kind of your neutral. So if you were to put heels of the hands now a little lower than where you just had them, heels of the hands on the hip bones, the ASIS, and the fingers reaching down toward the pubic bone, you'd pretty much have a level plane. Those 3 bony landmarks would be on a level plane. Does that feel pretty comfortable? No tension in the back with that? So that's your neutral pelvis. We want a neutral pelvis to set up, once again, good shock absorption for the spine. The 3 curves of the spine should be present, especially back here into that lumbar portion of the spine. So when we keep that neutral, you're setting that up nicely for, again, good shock absorption. For the most part with our exercises, when your feet are down in what we call a closed kinetic chain, we're going to just keep this neutral pelvic placement with the transversus and the pelvic floor engaged. If we take the legs up into an open kinetic chain, we need a little more muscle recruitment to stabilize. So if you think of just zipping up through the obliques, kind of pulling the hips a little closer to your ribs, and then returning that length back to your neutral. So it is going to be a subtle little movement to the pelvis, but really the goal is the additional abdominal recruitment. So if you inhale just at your neutral pelvic placement, exhale, think of zipping up through those obliques for what we call imprint, not flattening the low back, just zipping up the abs. Stay there as you inhale, and then exhale, think of putting that length back into the waist. Inhale. So again, exhale, really zip up, more zip up, more zip up, more zip up. Good. Now try to hold that as you inhale. Exhale, now return the length. Much better. Good. Take a breath. Exhale. Again, think of zipping up like ropes shortening to pull those hips towards your ribs. Take a breath, staying with that. Exhale, return that length. Good. Really subtle movement. It's really about the abdominal engagement. Once again, exhale, zipping up into that imprint. Inhale, stay in imprint. Exhale, we're going to take the right leg up to a little tabletop. Inhale, bring it back down. Left leg, exhale to bring it up. Good, inhale down. So just keep that alternating movement going, and the whole time these ropes are nice and shortened for your imprint. We're just testing out how well we can hold the obliques engagement while we move at the hips. Last one here, exhale, lift. Inhale, put it down, and then exhale, just kind of return that length to the waist. Good, so that's your neutral versus your imprint. You okay lying on the back still? We're gonna move up to basic principle number 3, that of rib cage placement. So all 4 sets of abs, internal obliques, external obliques, the transversus that we already talked about, and then the rectus abdominis, which is your main crunching, your main flexion muscle. All 4 of those muscles, sets of muscles, attach to the ribs somehow. So largely where we kind of hold the ribs in place is going to have a direct effect on how well we can engage those abs. Lots of times lying on the floor, people might tend to pop the ribs and overarch the back. Sometimes we'll also notice when people are sitting, they kind of jut the ribs forward like that. So when lying down as you are, you want to just have ribs soften toward the mat. When you're seated, you want to think of having the rib cage stacked right over the pelvis. What's usually going to challenge how well you can stabilize that is shoulder movement. So all I want you to do is inhale, reach to the ceiling. Exhale, arms toward ears, but only insofar as you can keep that knit. Inhale, back to the ceiling. Exhale, bring it back down to your sides. Yep. Inhale, try to just relax through there. Inhale, fingers to ceiling. Exhale, really feel how those abs have to hold on to those obliques. Inhale, back to the ceiling. Exhale, and back down. Good, one more time. Inhale. Exhale, arms overhead, not too close to the ears. Inhale, back to the ceiling. Exhale, bring it back down. Good, do one more of those. We also want to think about how the rib cage attaches to the thoracic portion of your spine. So 12 ribs and 12 ribs attached to those 12 thoracic vertebrae. So once again, important to have that nice rib cage placement in terms of the overall attachment of the spine. Good. Moving up to the shoulder blades, the scapulae. So scaps have the ability to protract, retract, elevate, depress, When we take the shoulders through abduction, the scaps are going to go through an upward rotation. When we come back down close to the body in adduction, the scaps are going to kind of go back through a downward rotation. So all those are good movement capabilities to give us more range of motion in our shoulders, but we always want to have a sense of stabilization at the same time. So the scaps are just lying flat on the back, there's width across the chest. We want to think of stabilizing the scaps at the initiation of every move. As far as the muscles that are stabilizing, it's going to be the lats, latissimus dorsi, the traps, mainly the mid and low fibers of the traps, the rhomboids, and then serratus anterior, which is the muscle group that really just keeps those scaps flat on the back. Okay? So here, I want you to just float those arms back to the ceiling and just feel like you're rested through the back of the shoulders. You're wide across the collarbones, and from here, we're just going to keep ribs nice and soft. We've got our neutral pelvis. When you inhale, you're just going to go through a little protraction. So bring those fingers closer to the ceiling, and then exhale, just relax it. Don't push into the mat, just release from it. Inhale, little protraction. Good. Exhale, melt it down. Inhale, glide it up. Good. Exhale it down. Now we're going to retract. So inhale, retract, give a light little press to the back of the shoulders into the mat, and then exhale, just think of floating the arms away a little bit. Inhale, retraction, making sure those ribs stay knit. Exhale, little float. One more time. Inhale, retract. Exhale, release. Good. And then just float those arms back down. We're going to leave palms facing in, just so you can really stay melted across those collarbones. So in like that. Now we're going to do elevation depression, even less range of motion. So when you inhale, just think of gliding the scaps towards the earlobes a little bit. And then exhale, kind of reach some energy down through your arms to go through slight depression. Inhale, yep, try to just keep the arms heavy on the mat. Reaching through the fingers with that exhale. Dragging the arm up with your inhale. Good. Exhaling it down, and then just relax. Take a breath in, exhale, bring those arms back to the ceiling once again. Now just keeping those the scaps nice and flat on the back. Take a breath. You're going to exhale one arm by ear, one down to the hip. Inhale as they kind of pass each other over you, and then exhale. Good. So here again, just moving ball and socket, that arm inside the shoulder, letting the scaps glide a little bit to assist. Inhale, exhale. Good. Exhale. Good. Inhale them both to the ceiling again, and then exhale, just melt them back down. You can put palms up, palms in, honestly, whatever makes you feel like you can just stay melted here. And then we're going to move on up to basic principle number 5, so head and cervical placement. So we always want to think of the head being right over the neck and shoulders through seated positions and nicely lined up when lying supine like you are. And so just like you have it, sometimes people might need a little head elevation. If they tend to be a little bit craned forward, it also helps to kind of just soften through the ribs. Anytime we do flexion, forward or upward flexion, we're going to think of what's called the head nod. So if you literally just press the base of the skull, so the bottom of the skull where it attaches into the neck, into those pads, and then just do a little bit of a release. So use your inhale as you nod. Yep, that's it. Exhale. Super. So think of eye line too. If you inhale and kind of scan your eyes 5 tiles ahead maybe, and then exhale, look right back overhead, and hopefully with this you can just keep the shoulders quiet. Good. So this works the muscles on the front of the neck, so we have nice support, especially as we lift. Good. So here then, inhale to nod. Exhale. We're going to stabilize through those shoulders, come up and lift from under the breastbone. So you'll get an initial lift. Now think of it as forward movement. Yep. Inhale, keeping the neutral. Exhale, bringing it back down, and then eyes overhead. Inhale, nod. Exhale, lift. Good. So that nod is just letting that cervical spine follow the line of the thoracic. You're not really doing a lot of independent neck movement. If we needed a little more support, so if you bring the hands back behind the head, angle the elbows up just a little. Inhale to nod again. Exhale, come up, come forward. Good, really shorten through those obliques. Take a breath. Exhaling it back down, looking overhead. One more time. Inhale, head nod, scan the eyes forward. Good, nice scapular stabilization as you come up. Stay on that inhale. Exhale, bringing it back down. Good. So then we're going to turn over on the tummy and test this out a little bit with some spine extension. So you can either put the forehead on those pads. You probably need at least, yeah, you probably need them both. Give space for your nose. Go a little more forward so that you can lengthen your neck a little more. Perfect. Arms here. Okay, so I want you to give me just a little squeeze to the bum. Transversus is drawn in and up, and again, just a little bit of obliques engagement here so that we're supported in the back. You're going to take a breath in. When you exhale, stabilize these scaps back and then extend from here. So just the chest is going to come off the mat, and now your eye line come a little higher. It's going to go out here. So not so much with neck, but move from spine. Inhale, and then exhale, come down. And as you come down, really think of lengthening that skull forward. Take a breath. Exhale, lifting. Some movement is from back here, right? So we don't overdo it with head and neck. Take a breath. Exhale, lengthen it down as if you're getting longer from the crown of your head to your toes. One more time. Inhale. Exhale, stabilize. You got it. Really think of lengthening through the breastbone. Breath in. Exhale, lengthening it back down. Super. And then just push right back into a shell stretch. Child's pose, it's shell stretch. Good. Marvelous. Nice. So I talked really slow
No,
for
it's
the
good.
purposes of your thing, your recording, so that you're sitting there writing stuff down.